All right, we're going to look at what David did when he encouraged himself in the Lord. Back when he came back to his city and everything was leveled and was having a really bad day because his guys wanted to kill him. So the first thing David did was he encouraged himself. He encouraged himself in the Lord. And then after he encouraged himself, he inquired of the Lord. And he said, God, what do I do? Do I go after these guys? What do I do? And then he acted on what God said to him. Now what we're going to do is break down what it means in the starting place to encourage ourselves in the Lord. How do we do that? Because this, as I said, is a very underdeveloped facet of our identity. First, we're going to look at Joshua 1, 8, and 9, where it says, in Joshua 8, it says, meditate on the word night and day, and to be careful to do everything written in it. It says, meditate on the word. And then it says, God says, be strong and of good courage, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So, and that is when inquiring of the Lord and acting. God said, I am with you. But first you meditate on the word. Now a lot of people have a hard time with that word meditate. But that word meditate means to reflect on God's word. And the literal translation is reflect and to mutter, which means repeat the word over and over. Repeat the word. So when you're speaking what the word says, what God says about you, you're repeating it over and over to get it just ingrained in you, so that it no longer is just in your mind, but it drops down into your heart and drops down into your spirit. How do we do this? I wrote a few notes here, so if I look down at them. First, you say what God says. So you say what is in the word. You're saying exactly what God says. You're saying what God says about himself and what he says about you. When you repeat what God says about you, even if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. If you don't fully believe it yet, doesn't matter. If God said it in his word, it's true. And you're simply repeating it and you're reflecting upon it. That this truth becomes solid inside of you and becomes part of you. And then you say what his promises are for you. In the first chapter of Joshua, God is encouraging Joshua to go into the promised land. And what I'm saying to you right now is I am encouraging you in the promises of God. And that is the promised land. The promises of God it's everything that he has for you. And when you encourage yourself in the promises of God, then you in turn will be able to encourage others in the promises of God. And this whole process just keeps duplicating itself. As we as believers encourage ourselves, we're able to encourage others. You speak in the word what your future is. Now, I'll tell you right here that God says you have hope and you have a future. It's not over. You have a future. And in the midst of your trial, you can say, God, I have hope and I have a future and I am going to make it. And then you speak all that's available to you. Everything in God's word. Now what you're doing, what this results in, when I said then, is then you are in total agreement with God. Because you're saying what he says is true, and you are agreeing with him. So see, we'll go back up to David. He encouraged himself. He inquired, that's INQ, he inquired of the Lord, and then he acted upon what God said. It's hard to act upon what God says when you don't know what he said or you don't believe what he said. And that's what this whole process is producing. So we have, you say the word out loud, which we're going to do in the next video. You say what it says about you, what it says about God, and you speak his promises for you, which is, the whole Bible is filled with his promises. We declare that we have a future. When we go into the promised land, we start seeing our future. When the spies went into the promised land, all those spies went in, 12 spies went in? 10 of them said, we can't do it. They're giants out there. 2 of them came back and they said, they're giants, but we can do this. God said. Why? They heard God. They had inquired of the Lord. They heard God. But 10 of them, nonetheless, looked at the giants and they said, we're grasshoppers. We look like grasshoppers in our own eyes and in their eyes, and we can't do this. They're huge. What you're doing is you're building yourself up so that you become as Joshua and Caleb. And you say, we can well take the land. We can well take the promises of God. Okay, on the next video, I'm going to make proclamations over you about your identity. I am going to speak words of encouragement over you. And then I will show you how to do this for yourself. So when I do this video, you look and see how many seconds into it I begin speaking, so that you can set this video up, in front of the mirror or by the mirror when you're putting your makeup on in the morning, and you can hear these proclamations over and over and over. And then there will be a sheet that you can download and print out so that you can speak these yourself and take them around with you during the day. So I want to give you solid tools that you can use to build yourself up and encourage yourself. Okay, go to the next video in this session.